The Galactic Council made their biggest mistake when they threatened Earth with devastating sanctions, because that's when we humans decided to dust off and power up our ancient doomsday warship, hidden for eons in our solar system. James Baker, hotshot pilot in the Terran Expeditionary Force, was on a routine scouting mission in the uncharted fringes of space when his instruments lit up with an alien signal. He altered course to investigate. As he approached the source, his view screen filled with the hulking silhouettes of alien battleships, a massive Breen war fleet where no Breen should be. Heart-pounding, James yanked his flight stick, banking hard to escape. But the Breen ships opened fire, lancing his small vessel with searing plasma bolts. Alarms wailed as armor plating buckled and life support failed. With his ship mortally wounded, James' crash landed on a barren, rocky moon. James pried himself from the smoldering wreckage, his pressure suit torn but intact. Bruised and disoriented, he took stock. Comms inoperable, supplies limited, air running out. He stumbled to the remains of his cargo hold, salvaging what survival gear he could. As he erected a crude shelter and activated his emergency distress beacon, an armored figure crested a ridge of jagged stone. It was Sci-Fi, ruthless warlord of the Breen Imperium. Flanked by his elite guards, Sci-Fi declared James a prisoner for violating Breen territory. When James protested, insisting his mission was peaceful, Sci-Fi sneered. "You humans have intruded where you do not belong for the last time. The Breen will ensure your meddlesome species faces dire consequences for this trespass." As Breen soldiers dragged James into a dropship, he realized with cold dread that this was no chance encounter. Something far more sinister was unfolding, a dark plot that could spell humanity's doom. Aboard the Breen flagship, a battered James was thrown into a cell. As he paced, straining to overhear snatches of his captor's speech, the scale of the threat to Earth became chillingly clear. In the corridors beyond, Sci-Fi raged against the Galactic Council, furious that these upstart humans, newcomers on the cosmic stage, had gained such influence so quickly. To his advisors, Sci-Fi laid out an insidious scheme: manipulate the Council into crushing Earth with trade restrictions and travel bans, shackling any human expansion beyond their home system. The Breen would seize the resources and territories that should be rightfully theirs. Reeling from these revelations, an unlikely ally reached out to James, Zorn, a member of a slave species who toiled in the bowels of the ship. In whispered tones, Zorn divulged the true depths of Sci-Fi's malice. The sanctions were merely the opening salvo. Sci-Fi craved a pretext for all-out war, hungering to conquer and subjugate Earth like so many worlds before. But Zorn spoke of a fragment of hope, a legend passed in secret among the stars, a mighty human warship from an age-long past, hidden in the solar system, its technology eclipsing any in the modern galaxy. James knew what he had to do. If he couldn't find a way to escape this ship, get word to Earth, uncover that ancient weapon, humanity would burn. The Breen were coming. And when the Galactic Council turned against mankind, that dusty relic of a warship might be their only salvation against the coming fire. James rummaged through the smoldering debris of the downed Breen fighter, his hands blackened with soot. He tossed aside mangled scraps of metal, searching for anything that resembled a communications device. Zorn, his alien companion, limped alongside him, his right leg badly bruised from the crash. "There has to be something here we can use," James muttered, frustration mounting with each fruitless minute. Zorn kicked over a twisted piece of the ship's hull, revealing a damaged but recognizable long-range transmitter. "James, look!" James scrambled over, hope flaring in his chest. He pried the device free, examining its battered casing. "It's in rough shape, but I think we can fix it." They carried the transmitter to the meager shelter they had constructed from the wreckage and set to work, Zorn holding components steady while James rewired and soldered with focused intensity. As they labored, James recounted Earth's history to his curious ally. "We weren't always so limited, you know," James explained, stripping a wire with his teeth. "Centuries ago, humanity had technology that rivaled anything out here. We explored the stars, built incredible ships and machines. But then something happened, some catastrophe that nearly wiped us out. We've been clawing our way back ever since. On Earth, in a dimly lit office deep within a military intelligence facility, Captain Alex Turner stared at his computer screen, his eyes widening as he scrolled through a trove of encrypted files. The documents hinted at a secret buried in Earth's past, a warship of immense power, hidden away in the dark recesses of the solar system. Alex leaned back in his chair, mind racing. He knew he had stumbled onto something big, something that could change the course of human history. But as he dug deeper, his superior burst into his office, face etched with disapproval. "Turner, I thought I made myself clear. Drop this investigation immediately. That's an order." Alex hesitated, tempted to argue, but thought better of it. "Yes, sir. Understood." But even as he spoke the words, Alex knew he couldn't let this go. Too much was at stake. As soon as his superior left, he reached for his communicator, keying in the contact details for Dr. Eliza Novak. If anyone could help him unravel this mystery, it was her. On the uncolonized planet, James and Zorn huddled over the repaired long-range transmitter, sweat beading their brows. The device hummed with power, its lights flickering to life. "It's working," Zorn breathed, his voice tinged with relief. James nodded, already inputting coordinates. "We can't risk a long transmission. The Breen will be monitoring for any signals. I'll send a short burst to my brother Michael, encoded with a rendezvous point and a reference to the legend of the ancient warship. He'll know what to do." With a final keystroke, James sent the message hurtling across the vastness of space, a desperate plea for help and a glimmer of hope in the face of impossible odds. On Earth, Michael Baker frowned at the strange message that appeared on his communications console. As he decoded its contents, his eyes widened in shock and understanding. He reached for his communicator, signaling to Alex and Dr. Novak. "We need to talk," Michael said, his voice grave. "It's about my brother, and something more, something that could change everything." In the grand chambers of the Galactic Council, Sire Father stood before the assembled representatives, his voice dripping with accusation and malice. He presented fabricated evidence, painting James as a reckless aggressor, a threat to the peace and stability of the galaxy. "The humans have proven themselves unworthy of a place among us," Sire Father declared. His words met with murmurs of agreement from many of the council members. "We must act now before their ambition and arrogance lead us all to ruin." Back on the uncolonized planet, James and Zorn crouched low in the dense undergrowth, their hearts pounding as Breen patrols swept the area. Plasma bolts sizzled overhead, scorching the foliage around them. "We can't stay here," James hissed, his hand tightening around his weapon. "We need to find a way off this rock, get to the rendezvous point." Zorn nodded, his eyes scanning the jungle ahead. "There's a Breen outpost not far from here. If we can infiltrate it, steal a ship." James met his gaze, a grim smile touching his lips. "Then that's exactly what we're going to do." As the net tightened around them, and the fate of humanity hung by a thread, James and Zorn steeled themselves for the fight of their lives. The road ahead was fraught with peril, but they had no choice. They had to succeed, or all would be lost. James and Zorn crouched behind a stack of supply crates, eyeing the Breen guards patrolling the outpost perimeter. James tapped Zorn's shoulder and pointed to a small transport ship docked nearby. "That's our ticket out of here," James whispered. "On my signal, we take out those two guards and make a run for it." Zorn nodded, gripping his stolen Breen weapon tightly. James counted down silently, then sprang into action. They rushed the guards, catching them off guard with swift strikes. Alarms blared as James yanked open the transport's hatch. "Go, go!" he yelled, shoving Zorn inside and leaping in after him. James's fingers flew across the unfamiliar controls. The engines roared to life just as plasma bolts peppered the hull. They lifted off, accelerating away from the outpost. "We've got company!" Zorn shouted, pointing at the radar display. 3 Breen fighters screamed out of the sky behind them. James banked hard, diving into a maze of towering rock formations. Plasma fire sizzled past, barely missing them. "Hang on!" James yelled, corkscrewing the ship through a narrow gap between two massive boulders. One pursuer smashed into the rocks in a ball of flame. The other two stayed on their tail, relentless. James skimmed the transport along deep canyons, weaving between jagged peaks. His hands were slick with sweat on the controls. A lucky shot clipped their wing. Alarms shrieked as James fought to keep them airborne. He spotted a sliver of open sky ahead and gunned the engines. They burst out of the canyons, their pursuers right behind. "Zorn, can you get the hyperdrive online?" James shouted over the din of warning klaxons. "I'm trying," Zorn called back, frantically working at an access panel. "It's not responding." Another hit rocked the ship. Systems flickered and died. James's stomach lurched as they began to lose altitude. "Brace for impact," he yelled. The ground rushed up to meet them. At the last second, James wrenched the controls, sending them into a wild spin. They hit hard, skidding and bouncing across the rocky terrain before finally grinding to a halt. Dazed, James looked up to see the Breen fighters circling overhead like vultures. He grabbed Zorn's arm. "We've got to move, now!" They stumbled from the wreckage, sprinting for cover as plasma bolts rained down around them. James spotted a cave entrance and pulled Zorn inside just as their ruined ship exploded behind them. Panting, they peered out at the Breen ships now landing nearby. James felt a flicker of hope as he noticed the cave walls were lined with strange glowing symbols. "Zorn," he whispered, "I think we just found something big." Meanwhile on Earth, Michael Baker paced in a dimly lit conference room. Alex Turner and Dr. Eliza Novak sat at the table, poring over stacks of classified documents. "This is everything I could dig up on the Warship," Michael said. "But it's mostly dead ends and redactions." Alex leaned back, rubbing his eyes. "There's got to be something we're missing." Eliza suddenly sat up straight. "Wait a second, look at this." She pointed to a grainy photo of an ice core sample. Faint markings were visible, eerily similar to known alien scripts. "Where was this taken?" Michael asked, leaning in for a closer look. "Antarctica," Eliza replied. "Some sort of classified dig site." Michael nodded grimly. "Looks like we're going on a field trip to the South Pole." Days later, they trudged through howling Antarctic winds toward a nondescript research station. Inside, they found banks of ancient computers, their screensavers displaying strings of alien characters. "My God," Eliza breathed. "This is it, the key to finding the warship." As she worked to decipher the data, alarms began to blare. Michael's communicator crackled to life. "This is Fleet Command," a voice barked. "We've got a situation. Breen warships just entered the system. They're on an attack vector for Earth." Michael locked eyes with his companions. "We're out of time. Whatever's here, we need to find it now." In the depths of space, James and Zorn drifted in their crippled ship. Life support was failing. The air grew thin and cold. "There," Zorn croaked suddenly, pointing at a faint blip on their sensors. "A signal." James squinted at the readout. Some kind of planetoid? No, wait, it's hollow. They limped toward the mysterious object on the last dregs of power. As they drew closer, both gasped in awe. It wasn't a planetoid at all, but a colossal derelict ship of clearly alien design. "By the stars," Zorn whispered. "What is this place?" They docked with trembling hands, stepping out onto deck plates untouched for eons. Impossibly, systems hummed to life around them, responding to their presence. James ran his hand along a console covered in intricate symbols. "Zorn, I think we just found something that could change everything." As they ventured deeper into the ancient vessel's mysteries, neither was aware of the Breen Armada mustering at the edge of human space, poised to strike. James ran his hand along the alien console, feeling the cold metal hum beneath his fingertips. Lights flickered to life, illuminating the vast chamber around them. Zorn stood beside him, eyes wide with wonder. "It's responding to us," James breathed. "But how?" Zorn pointed to a pulsing blue orb embedded in the center of the console. I think it's scanning us somehow. As if on cue, a holographic display burst into existence above the orb. Strange symbols and diagrams flowed across it in a dizzying stream. "Can you make sense of any of this?" James asked, squinting at the alien script. Zorn shook his head. "Not exactly, but wait, look at that." A series of images flashed across the display. Sleek ships, unlike anything they'd ever seen. Impossible weapons that seemed to bend the fabric of space itself. And finally, a race of beings. Tall, ethereal, with eyes that glowed with inner light. "The Ansari," James whispered. More information poured forth. The Ansari's rise to power, their mastery of hyperdrive technology, the terrible war that had driven them to create weapons of unimaginable destructive capability. "James," Zorn said, his voice tight with excitement. "Look at these coordinates." A star map appeared, zeroing in on a location not far from Earth. James's heart raced as he realized what they were seeing. "It's the Warship," he said. "The one from the old stories. It's real." Suddenly, an alarm blared through the ship. James spun around, expecting to see Breen soldiers pouring through the airlock. Instead, he saw a message flashing on a nearby screen. "It's from Michael," he said, quickly decoding the transmission. "They've found something big in the Kuiper Belt. And, oh no." "What is it?" Zorn asked. "The Breen. They've launched a full-scale attack on our colonies. We're out of time." James turned back to the console, frantically searching for anything that might help them reach the coordinates faster. As he worked, he could almost feel the weight of humanity's fate pressing down on his shoulders. "Hold on, Michael," he muttered. "We're coming." Across the solar system, Michael Baker stood in the cavernous hold of an impossible ship. The ceiling stretched so high above him that it vanished into shadow. Strange angular structures jutted from the walls and floor, defying conventional engineering. "Dr. Novak," he called out. "Any luck with those systems?" Eliza's voice crackled over the comm. "It's slow going. The encryption is like nothing I've ever seen, but I think, yes, I've got something." A low hum filled the air. Lights began to flicker on throughout the massive vessel, revealing its true scale and alien beauty. "My God," Alex whispered beside him. "It's actually working." Michael nodded, a mix of awe and dread churning in his gut. He activated his long-range communicator, praying the signal would reach his brother. "James," he said, "if you can hear this, we've found it. The ship is real, but we need you here. The Breen are coming and we're running out of time." As Michael's team raced to bring the ancient warship online, fleets of Breen vessels dropped out of hyperspace above human worlds. Plasma fire rained down on defenseless colonies. The few human ships that rose to meet them were swatted aside like insects. In the grand chamber of the Galactic Council, Sire Father stood triumphant as the other representatives voted to condemn humanity as a dangerous, unstable species. "The humans have brought this upon themselves," he declared. "Let the Breen be the instrument of galactic justice." But in the depths of space, aboard a derelict alien vessel and a newly awakened superweapon, the last hope for humanity stirred to life. The pieces were in place. The final battle for survival was about to begin. James looked at Zorn, his face set with steadfast perseverance. "Let's go save the world." They punched in the coordinates and felt the ancient ship lurch beneath them as it prepared to jump. Whatever lay ahead, they knew the fate of their entire species now rested in their hands. The ancient derelict ship lurched as James and Zorn punched in the coordinates. A low hum built to a crescendo as the hyperdrive engaged. Stars blurred into streaks of light, then vanished entirely as they plunged into the void between worlds. James gripped the alien controls, his fist clenched. "How long until we reach Earth?" Zorn's eyes darted across the unfamiliar readouts. "Minutes, maybe seconds. This technology, it's beyond anything we've ever seen." As if in answer, the ship shuddered violently. The swirling darkness outside the viewports gave way to a scene of utter chaos. Earth hung in the distance, a blue jewel wreathed in fire. Breen warships swarmed around the planet, their weapons lashing out in relentless barrages. My God, James breathed. Debris from shattered human defense platforms tumbled past them. The comms crackled to life with panicked transmissions from Earth's defenders. This is Admiral Chen! We've lost the orbital cannons! Fall back to... The signal cut off in a burst of static. A proximity alarm blared. James yanked on the controls, narrowly avoiding a massive chunk of wreckage. Zorn, see if you can get those weapons online. Zorn's fingers flew across the alien console. Incomprehensible symbols flashed across the screens. I'm trying, but I can't make sense of... His words were cut short as a Breen cruiser loomed before them, its main guns swiveling to target the derelict. James braced for impact, but the expected blast never came. Instead, a shimmering energy field sprang to life around their ship, deflecting the incoming fire in a dazzling light show. How did you do that? James asked, incredulous. Zorn shook his head. I didn't. The ship, it's protecting itself. On the bridge of the Breen flagship, Sirefather leaned forward, his eyes narrowing at the sight of the unfamiliar vessel. What is that? He snarled. Destroy it immediately. James watched in horror as the massive Breen warship turned its full arsenal towards them. Instinctively, he jabbed at a pulsing red sigil on his control panel. The derelict shuddered, and for a moment, nothing happened. Then, a wave of pure force erupted from their ship. It rippled outward, warping space itself. The Breen flagship crumpled like paper, torn apart from the inside out. Dozens of smaller craft caught in the wake simply ceased to exist, leaving behind only rapidly dispersing clouds of subatomic particles. Holy shit, James whispered. The remains of Earth's fleet, regrouping after the initial Breen assault, seized the moment. Plasma torpedoes and mass driver rounds lanced out, carving bloody furrows through the suddenly disorganized Breen armada. For a brief, shining moment, it seemed the tide had turned. James let out a whoop of triumph as another Breen cruiser disintegrated under their onslaught, but his elation was short-lived. Alarms shrieked throughout the derelict. Consoles sparked and sputtered, screens flickering with gibberish. What's happening? James shouted over the din. Zorn's face was pale. Some kind of energy pulse. It's overloading our systems. Through the viewports, James saw dozens of smaller Breen craft converging on their position, each trailing tendrils of crackling energy. The derelict's shields flickered and died. Hyperdrive! James yelled. Get us out of here! Zorn slammed his palm down on the console. The familiar hum of the hyperdrive built up, sputtering and faltering. With a final, desperate surge, they vanished from the battlefield mere seconds before the Breen weapons found their mark. They emerged above a desolate, cratered moon. In the distance, a massive shape hung in space, the ancient human warship. But there was no time for wonder or relief. Alarms blared as the derelict, its systems failing, plummeted towards the lunar surface. Grab everything you can, James shouted, snatching up portable data cores. We've got to abandon ship. They sprinted for the airlock, the deck pitching wildly beneath their feet. James punched in the emergency release code, and they leapt into the void, propelled by their suit jets towards the waiting warship. Behind them, the derelict slammed into the moon's surface in a spectacular explosion. James didn't look back. His eyes were fixed on the looming bulk of humanity's last hope and the swarm of Breen ships emerging from hyperspace in its wake.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.